Good evening, everybody. The date is July 7th of 2016. I want to welcome you to another edition of the Nick of Time News Show. As always, I'm your host, Nick Dorsey. I do want to thank you for tuning in. Before I jump into the commentary for today's show, I wanted to go ahead and get some basics out of the way. Make sure that you are following me on Twitter at Nick of Time News. Go ahead and follow me at Twitter at Nick of Time News is my handle, twitter.com, obviously. And of course, it is very helpful if you subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. It allows me to be visible to more people. And of course, if you're on YouTube, you can look at the left-hand column there. It'll see all your subscriptions. So next to my name, it'll alert you when I have a new episode ready to listen and or view. Now, I know my episodes have been further between each other, but I am trying to get some things set up and ready for a relaunch so we can have a full downloadable podcast. You can download it to your iPod or MP3 player, or even your cell phone, so you can listen to it whenever you're even offline. I'm still trying to work on the website that will be launched. It'll have all the episodes and even some articles, some blogging that I'm going to be doing all in one centralized location. And we're also trying to get video feeds set up. So that way, instead of just listening to the show, if you would rather, I'll be able to go ahead and show you some videos of things that I'm talking about. And then as well, you'll be able to look at me doing the show instead of just hearing the audio. Now, as you can imagine, all this may take some time, and I know for sure it will. You can expect a full expanded relaunch no later than the start of next year. In the meantime, I'll just be doing some commentaries to keep you up on major events and letting people know my thoughts on some of the things going on in this country. Now, with that being said, I have a very important commentary for you today. And I was going to think about writing a blog about it. So I was going to do a couple aspects on my take on it. But I actually just decided that I'm going to go ahead and create an episode commentary about it because it's very important. With the events of the last 48 hours, I had to speak out on what's going on. I'm letting you know all right now, full disclosure, some of you listening to this are about to get super uncomfortable. And I'm okay with that because I personally, and I don't know how everyone on this feels about it, am tired of watching police murder people. I'm tired of watching people get murdered by supposed peace officers. I'm especially tired of every person who gets killed by the cops, particularly black people who get killed by the cops, getting their character assassinated immediately after the events take place. Now look, before I get into this long commentary, I'm going to go ahead and explain to you the facts that we know so far in the most recent situations. Now, please keep in mind, it's still only 48 hours after both the events have happened, or not even 48 hours rather. So please keep in mind I'm giving you the latest information. What we're being told so far is, in the first situation, is that a man was killed. His name was Alton Sterling. Now, what happened was the police were called on this individual. The man who called the police allegedly told them that Mr. Sterling was threatening him with a gun. It was later discovered, just today even, this information came out, that the man was a homeless man who was panhandling. It has been stated by a witness that Mrs. Sterling asked him to leave him alone and back off. The homeless man persisted to harass Mr. Sterling, and because of that, Mr. Sterling showed him a firearm to get him to leave him alone. Now, at that point is when the homeless man called the police, who had showed up. It's unclear what immediately transpired beyond basic questioning, but that leads me to what we actually saw on camera. We do know, based off two separate camera angles, not just one, that captured the events, that police tackled Mr. Sterling to the ground. Now, one had his chest pinned to the ground, while the other had his legs secure. Loud words were exchanged. It's not quite clear exactly what was said, but one of the officers pulled out his firearm and pointed it at Mr. Sterling's face, threatening to use it if he didn't stop struggling. The police officer, almost immediately after warning, fired 2 shots, and the camera pulls away, most likely out of fear for the person who's filming. The police yelled for him to stop moving, again, and then almost immediately after that second warning, 3 more shots were fired. Now, because both camera angles moved away from the exact scene, it's unsure if all 5 bullets hit Mr. Sterling, but you can almost guarantee that they did because both officers were at point blank range as he was on the ground. And when they panned back to Mr. Sterling, they showed him with a bloody chest. He had a couple of final movements. The cop was screaming an expletive, and then Mr. Sterling passed away. And that's what the video shows. That's on camera. Now, based off what we saw, there is no excuse for this. 0%. There is nothing that can be said to say this cop was 100% in the clear to execute this man in front of witnesses. Now, as we've seen in almost all these situations, there are people that will back the police no matter what. It doesn't matter who they were. It doesn't matter, the victim's name or what they did or anything in their past. Or it doesn't matter. If the cop thought it was the right decision to kill the person, then that person's going to back them. But look, I can't think like that. Nothing is that 100% dead set. There's no room to be able to think that maybe that situation shouldn't have happened if you're always going to go on one side. You got to think logically, just in the numbers. If something happens once, maybe it's a mistake. Twice, you're teetering on the brink of starting a habit. When you're up to the 558th person this year to be killed by cops, we have a problem. Now, a lot of conservatives think we have a problem with Muslims. And yet you're over 10 times likely in just this year's statistics alone to be killed by a cop than you are somebody who identifies themselves as a Muslim. And like I said, that's this year alone. If you look at it last year, there was over 1,000 people killed by the police in this country, and only 2 were supposedly believed to have been killed by a Muslim. So before I give you my full commentary, I just want to play this clip of the family reacting to the situation. If you think these things don't affect anyone, take a moment, listen to this.
Alton Sterling, regardless if you knew him or not, he is not what the mass media is making him out to be. This is a plant to try and obscure the image of a man who's simply trying to earn a living, to take care of his children. With that being said, the individuals involved in his murder took away a man with children who depended upon their daddy on a daily basis. My son is not the youngest. He is the oldest of his siblings. He is 15 years old. He had to watch this as this was put all over the outlets and everything that was possible to be shown. As some may know, Alton sold CDs and was doing just that, not bothering anyone, and had the consent of the store owners as well. And then the events that recorded during the 2 officers, that this event would not go unjustice. That's right. It would not go unnoticed.
Now, if that doesn't upset you, I don't know what to tell you. That boy is literally crying out to have his father back. And most of what I hear from people is about telling me why it's okay that this happened. Nothing but excuses on why it's okay a cop executed this guy in front of a store just trying to make a living selling CDs. The biggest one that everyone's using is he had a criminal record. So what? Martha Stewart has a criminal record. Robert Downey Jr. has a criminal record. A lot of people have criminal records. That doesn't give someone the right to just go up and execute that person When the cops pulled up on him, they didn't know he had a record. When they killed him at point blank range and shot him 5 times in the chest, they didn't know he had a record. And even if he does, he's obviously out in the world, so that means if he was convicted, he already paid the price for his crimes. I'm not saying he's a perfect person, but who is? That doesn't mean that he deserves to be murdered in full view of other people on camera when his kids are going to see that footage one day. They're going to have to live without a father for the rest of their lives. Who gets to make those decisions? Cops are supposed to protect the community. They take an oath. They're the ones who signed up for danger, quote unquote. We're citizens. We didn't sign up for that. If he really was a so-called quote unquote criminal, were his crimes worse than Dylan Roof, who killed 9 people in a church and was apprehended peacefully and he gets a fair trial? Were his crimes worse than James Holmes, who walked into a Colorado movie theater and killed 12 people and was apprehended peacefully and given a fair trial? Were police in more danger with Mr. Sterling as they were with Lance Tamayo, a 45-year-old man who was waving a gun at children in a public park in San Diego and waved it at police once they arrived on scene? There was an hour-long standoff before they finally shot him, and they shot him once, and in the stomach non-fatally, and then negotiated his surrender on a cell phone while his gun was still within reach. He gets a fair trial. So we can safely throw that argument out of the window, because the reality is cops are trained for these situations, and they should be able to apprehend suspects without shooting them 5 times in the chest and murdering them like an animal on the sidewalk. When I hear someone say Black Lives Matter as a cry to just get people to understand that black people just don't want to be murdered in cold blood, there's always someone close by saying all lives matter. Well, look here. If all lives matter, where's the outrage? Where's the value of Alton Sterling's life? Why aren't the pro-gun people crying out for his right to bear arms like every other American? I'll tell you why. Because the reality of the situation is all lives matter, but in this country, some lives matter more than others. And that's why when a black man dies at the hands of police, everyone's so quick to say, what about black people who kill other black people? What about it? That's true for every race. White people are mostly killed by white people. So what? Who cares? Their murder solve rate in this country is almost 65%. The prosecution rate for cops murder is less than 1%. So how could anyone sit there and say nothing is being done on inner city violence when our prisons are filled to the brim with black and brown folks and black and brown youth, and cops who commit the exact same crimes walk away scot-free? I'll tell you why. Because the reality of the situation is we have a justice system that does not play fair to everyone, and no matter how uncomfortable that makes someone, that's why a rapist who had 2 eyewitnesses is referred to as a Stanford athlete and given 3 months in jail, and a black man who's selling CDs outside a convenience store with the permission of the owner of the store is murdered in cold blood for no good reason. And even after all that information, everything that's been said, everything that's out there, there are still some people who will fight with me after this comes out, and they're going to say Mr. Sterling was a thug and he should die and cops were right to kill him. I don't know how to convince these people. I don't even know why I should have to convince these people that this is wrong and we should have a much higher standard of valuing human life. Now, for the naysayers though, let me tell you about Philando Castile. Not even 24 hours after Mr. Sterling took his last breath, and we're looking at a similar situation all over again. Mr. Castile was pulled over with his girlfriend and 4-year-old daughter in the back seat. He allegedly had a broken tail light, and that's why he got pulled over. Although his girlfriend had denied that was true, the aftermath of the incident was live streamed onto Facebook and viewed over 1 million times before the post was deleted. There were millions and millions of people who woke up today and saw Mr. Philando Castile take his last breaths. Lavish Reynolds, who was his girlfriend, was in the passenger seat and she live streamed it for people to see. She said that he was asked to pull out his license, which he was doing when he disclosed to the officer that he was carrying a pistol, which is what you're supposed to do. When you get a CCW permit, which is a concealed to carry weapon, you're supposed to disclose to an officer that stops you or that pulls you over, or they stop you on the street or pull you over in a car, that you have a weapon on you. And what they normally do is they take it, make sure that you're licensed, that the gun has proper licensing and verification, and the serial number is still intact and all that stuff, and then they give you your weapon back. But what happened was, when he went to go pull out his license, he let them know he was carrying a pistol, and Miss Reynolds jumped in and said, well, he is licensed to carry the pistol, to make sure the officer knows. The police officer immediately said something to the effect of, get your hands up, or let me see your hands. And as he raised them, the officer freaked out and shot him 4 times at point blank range. Now that is where the recording that you see Mr. Castile bleeding heavily on his side and arm, that you see it in the recording. The cop, who is clearly in distress, clearly there is no denying that he is in distress, was yelling just like the other one in Louisiana. He was yelling expletives and going over again the instructions he'd given Mr. Castile. It seems as if he was doing a very emotional job of trying to justify his actions, and in my opinion, doing it very poorly. He's clearly in emotional distress, and fear is not, he's not in a position to make sudden life and death choices, as he did. Now, I'm going to let you hear that part of the clip so you can make that judgment for yourself. Please note that there are curse words in it.
Stay with me. We got pulled over for a busted tail light in the back. And the police he's covered. They killed my boyfriend. He's licensed. He's licensed to carry. He was trying to get out his ID and his wallet out his pocket, and he let the officer know that he had a firearm and he was reaching for his wallet, and the officer just shot him in his arm. We're waiting for back. I will, sir. No worries. I will. Fuck! He just shot his arm off. We got pulled over on Larpener.
I told him not to reach for it. I told him to get his hand out.
You told him to get his ID, sir, and his driver's license. Oh my God, please don't tell me he's dead. Please don't tell me my boyfriend just went like that.
Keep your hands.
Does that sound like someone who should be waving around a gun in people's faces? She's calm and collected and begging for his life. As you can hear for yourself, the cop is emotional, which is not something you should see in a police officer. They're supposed to be above situations so that they can be in a position to de-escalate things and keep people safe. If they're walking around with this much fear, it's only a matter of time before they kill someone. He shouldn't even be in this job. Remember what I said earlier. Police signed up for this danger. They know what this job entails, and they agree to protect people. Regular people like me, like Mr. Castile, like Mr. Sterling. We didn't sign up to have our lives in danger on a daily basis. The fact that it was clearly only seconds after he said he had a pistol tells you something no one is talking about after looking at the recording. He must have already had his gun drawn to shoot someone that fast. Why is a gun being drawn and pointed at someone in point blank range for a simple traffic stop? Now, here comes the kicker. He did exactly what the cop told him to do, and he was shot. He didn't have a criminal history. He's never even been arrested or fingerprinted, and he worked for the public school system. So, for anyone who's not familiar with that line of work, that means he had to go through extensive background checks to be around students. They make you go to the police station. You have to get a live scan to make sure that you're not a criminal. So apparently, follow the law and you won't kill is utter and total bullshit. Telling a black person to follow the law so a cop doesn't kill him is like telling a woman to cover up her body so she doesn't get raped. When the club shooting in Orlando happened, all these gun rights activists came out of the woodwork and was talking about how everyone should be allowed to carry a gun. Where's their outrage that apparently not everyone has the right to carry a gun? I'm here to make a stand about this. If anyone thinks that this is not an issue, you're wrong. You are 100% totally in the wrong. If anyone thinks that racism is dead and totally gone out of this country, chances are it's because you're not the person going through it. You're not having people be racist towards you. You're not having a system be racist towards you. As long as most of the country is willing to sweep all this under the rug and refer to everyone talking about, racism as having a quote unquote victim mentality, we will never fix this issue. And that is a fact. So I'm here to tell everyone right here, right now, that Black Lives Matter. And if your first response is all lives matter, then you need to take a hard look at yourself and see if you're actually part of the problem. Because we all know that all lives matter. The problem is that people pushing all lives matter don't ever seem to be outraged when it's the black lives lost in police violence. Saying gay people deserve equal rights doesn't mean straight people don't deserve equal rights. Saying women deserve equal pay doesn't mean that men and people who identify as different genders don't deserve equal pay. The point of Black Lives Matter is to raise awareness that their lives get treated as if their lives matter less. Now, I know this episode was heavy, and I know that we're going to have a lot of conversations going forward because we have to have these conversations if we're ever going to see any type of change. We cannot keep sweeping this under the rug. These issues will never get solved. Now, with that in mind, I do want to thank you for listening in. I do appreciate all the commentary that you have back from me, so do feel free to leave comments, message me, feel free to send me a tweet, again, at Nick of Time News, about everything that you've seen and experienced in regards to these issues. And as always, share this video as much as you can. This message needs to get out there. People need to understand that we have to fix these problems. Until next time, this has been your host, Nick Dorsey.